Right, well, this is going to be the day. We're almost ready to print. I can't guarantee that it's going to print, but I can guarantee that today I will try and print something. But before that, there's a few things to be done. Only mine, I think. Well, actually, I've got to attach a power supply for the heated bed. That's kind of a bit critical. Yeah, going to do that now. So what we have here is the very temporary electronics setup. Yeah, it's a bit of a dog's dinner, but it'll do the job for the time being. I'm doing it this way because I want to work out exactly what the sort of power consumptions are. I want to get a 24 volt power supply just to drive the bed, and I'll probably power the rest of it off with 12 volts. And yeah, I want to see exactly how much that 12 volts is. I think I can probably get a fairly small power supply just to provide the current to everything apart from the bed, and then have something a bit more meaty for the 24 volt supply in the bed. So what I'm doing temporarily is I've got the bench power supply here, which would normally, if it was on, provide 12 volts to the number one 12 volt input on the Arduino, which powers basically everything apart from the heated bed. Then over here I have a 12 volt power supply that I had knocking about anyway. I think it's a 15 amp 12 volt power supply, so it would kind of be borderline to power everything really. I have, yeah, basically I've got the multimeter here that's measuring the voltage being put out by this because I've cranked it up as far as it'll go, and I'm measuring current to the Arduino's heated bed 12 volt port 2 on the Arduino, measuring the current there, which is currently basically nothing. You may just about see this weird thing here, and this is a sort of makeshift heat sink. It's basically a piece of the square bar aluminium that I used to make my bed support, drilled a little hole in the bottom, and I've screwed it to the MOSFET that controls the heat bed. Basically, when I tried this out first time, even with 12 volts and setting the temperature target to like 50-55 degrees, that MOSFET gets up to somewhere in the order of 110-120 degrees. Sticking this little bar on here, albeit pretty ugly and temporary, probably brings it back down to about 60, so it's actually doing a decent job. Rather handily, we've got the vents blowing air out of this power supply over that bar and over the stepper drivers, trying to keep everything cool. So I will power it up a sec and we'll see where we are. So hopefully you can see that the 12 volt power supply is putting out 14.89 volts. Basically I just cranked it up as far as I could on the adjust pot to get as much power out of it as possible. It's not really going to get anywhere near its current rating, I don't think. So I'm just driving up the volts as much as possible in order to get as much out of this heat bed as possible, or rather as much out of the MOSFET and the 12 volt. The whole setup is pretty weak. It struggles to get to 50 what's the term, 50 degrees. So if I go in, and while the actual LCD hasn't corrupted, if I go in and set a manual temperature on the bed, and let's set it to 55 degrees, which is what I will be doing my first print at, we will see that it kicks into life, and we've got about 12 amps being drawn through there right now. Now it drops down very quickly down to about what's it, 8, 7, 5, 6, 4. So I'm not sure. I thought that in the Marlin firmware I had disabled PWM on the bed, but unless the PIDs are really way out, it seems to be doing some funky stuff. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. I haven't really investigated it that much, but with this kind of setup it ramps up pretty quickly. I mean, I was running it not that long ago, so it wasn't dead cold anyway, but it ramps up pretty quickly to about 40 to 45 degrees, and then it slowly struggles its way up to 55. But the good news is, with this little aluminium bar on here, it never really, the MOSFET never really gets that hot. The polyfuse, well, I don't know, I haven't had any issues with that yet. Anyway, this is all temporary, but it will do for our first print. So there are a couple of other things I need to do before we can run a print. Most obviously, we've got the blue tape on the bed now. Yeah, depending on how quickly the Mark 42 beds become available, if it's not imminent, then I'll probably get a sheet of PEI for that. If I can get a Mark 42 bed, then well, I'll wait for that probably. So the only other thing that's really been done is because the basically I set the Z probe offset before running the extruder. After running the extruder and getting the whole hot end hot and that, I've crimped up the nozzle, make sure that's nice and tight when it was hot, which means that it's probably moved away a little bit from the bed. So I reran the Z zeroing and got a new offset, which was I think it was originally, before it was heated, it was 0.14 mil, and I had to change the offset to 0.22. So yeah, well, yeah, thermal expansion, who knew? And yeah, that's about it really. Right, well, that should be all of the actual physical, mechanical, electrical things done. All that's left to do is a few little tweaks in configuration H. Oops, nothing much, just to bring everything up to date and to take account for that new Titan nozzle. So yep, going to do that, and I'll be back. Because I got fed up searching for the parameters I wanted to change in the configuration H file, some of the parameters aren't really laid out exactly how I would, with things that you would think would be next to each other, sometimes different distances apart. I decided to create the file into Notepad++ and add some tags to it so I could quickly find the relevant settings. Anyway, I'm sure you're not interested in that. Let's have a quick look at the few items that I've changed since the setup video. So the first thing I've changed is the cold extrusion prevention protection, which is in here somewhere. So yeah, basically I had these turned off whilst I was testing or calibrating the extruder. So I've basically uncommented them and put them back on. So the other thing I've changed is the Z-axis, the speed of the Z-axis. I've increased it from 8 to 10 just because I think it could do with moving a little bit faster. I've also changed the clearance that the Z-axis lifts up during bed leveling. I think it was around about 10 that I set it to way back when I did my first run through of configuration H. And there is no need for it to lift up 10 mil. 4 mil is plenty, so I've changed that there. Also on the Z-axis, what I've done is I've changed the minimum height that the Z-axis can be before homing. Now I set this originally I think to about 4 because I just thought it was the height that it would always move up on the Z-axis, but actually it isn't. If you read the if you read what I already commented on here, it's the minimum height. So if it's less than the number you put in here, it will raise to that number. If it's that number or more, it just doesn't do anything. So that's fine. But what I've done is, because that's the case, I've increased it to 8 because, yeah, just in case we're ever in a situation where we need to clear those nuts holding the bed on, yeah, 8 mil will clear them plenty enough. Because of that, I have also increased the maximum height of the Z-axis, because what I did is I allowed for the 4 mil I had, believing that it was always going to add 4 mil, you know, bounce the Z-axis up 4 mil when you homed it. Seeing as it only does that if it's less than, well, 8 mil now, I can make the maximum position of the Z-axis the maximum that it can actually reach before hitting the nut. So I've increased that from 186 to 190. I had also sort of accidentally, I guess, left this one commented out, with the minimum software end stop, where it would prevent you from going less than 0, and I had commented that out to deactivate it to set up the Z probe. Obviously in normal operation that should be on, so I have uncommented it so that we have that safety feature back in place. Just another nicety really on the homing, I have changed the actual distances that the
y-axis moves before homing Z, so I've left X to move it more or less into the center, but rather than moving Y all the way back to the center, which is kind of a waste, don't need that for the safe homing, all I've done is I've just put it to well, Y min pos plus 5, so it's just going to be in relation to 0, 0, 0, 5 mil over. And whilst I was here, I also increased the Z homing rate. That was originally at 4, which the general Z movements were also. I had changed those before to 8, and I've changed them again to 10. So I've updated this one to 10 as well. And for some reason, these are in millimeters per minute, whereas the normal rates are in millimeters per second. So it's all multiplied by 60. So the only other thing that I've done is I've noticed whilst trying to use the LCD that the rotary encoder on there, at least for my taste, turns in the wrong direction. What I want is when you turn the dial in a clockwise direction for it to move down, and it was doing it the other way, which just seemed a bit wrong to me. So I've uncommented out this parameter here to reverse the encoder direction, and that fixed that. So that's all the changes I've made since the full step setup video. I will make a copy of this file available on the website without obviously my Notepad++ bits, because unless you've got Notepad++ set up the same as me, it won't be much use to you.
And I'm going to be quite happy not to be playing around with that configuration H file, even if it's for a couple of days. It is a lot easier now that I've... Let's turn our minds to slicing a 3D model. I'm going to use the off-the-shelf Prusa version of Slicer, which I haven't even done anything with yet, so I'm going to install that, which I won't bother covering because it's pretty straightforward. And yeah, just sort of tweak the settings for this printer, slice something, and then well, then we should be able to print.
Right, so I've installed the Prusa version of Slicer that comes with the Prusa driver pack. And yeah, I've actually already made a bunch of changes in here, but we'll get to those in a sec. Now, yeah, quite predictably, the first print I'm going to do is 3D Benchy. The reason why is, well, it seems like, well, it is a benchmark. That's why it was created. So it's probably as good as anything to print first of all and sort of see where some of the issues are. So let's bring that into Prusa, Slicer, and there it is. Now I've already made quite, well, I wouldn't say a lot of changes, but I've made some changes to the defaults here. So I'm just going to load those in a minute, and I will quickly go through them and tell you how they differ to the standard settings. Okay, so let's quickly go through the changes I've made. If we go into the printer settings and the general tab, okay, so obviously my bed is a different size and shape to the original Prusa Mark II, and I've set that in there. So the x-axis, the width if you like, is 205 mil, and the y-axis is 154 as measured out in the setup video. So that's all done. I don't think I have changed anything else on this page. On the custom G-code page I have made quite a few changes. Yeah, I won't go through these one at a time. I basically spent some time looking at all my options on G-code and decided the best thing to do was just to do a bare minimum. And yeah, I haven't made any changes to the extruder. That's all exactly as according to the standard 1.75 Prusa PLA setting that comes in Slicer. So moving on to the print settings, let's have a look at layers and perimeters. So what I've done is I've increased the first layer height from 0.2 as it is in the default to 0.25. Yeah, I just want to try and get a bigger first layer to, you know, for the first print, get it nice and big so hopefully it sticks down. If it needs trimming back, then well, yeah, I expect I'm in for quite a bit of tweaking in the future. So yeah. I've also changed the seam position to aligned. I think it is nearest as it comes. So for infill I have left it all unchanged. Skirt and brim is unchanged. All of these are unchanged up to advanced. In advanced I have increased the width of the first layer from, I think it's 9.42 by default I've increased that to 9.9, 0.5. 9.5 would be entertaining. I have increased it to 0.5 again, just to make it a bit fatter and hope that it sticks well. The rest of that is the same. And the rest is just my notes about what I changed. So in the filament settings, let's have a look at the filament. Yep, I haven't changed anything there whatsoever. I've left the cooling as standard. I haven't touched that at all because I don't know what it is. And yeah, thought I'd changed something else. Where is the... Let's have a look at the speeds. Okay, yeah, the speeds are here. I didn't change those. I don't know why I'm showing you. I haven't changed those at all. So that is all of the changes I've made, and these are the settings that will be going. I'm going to move the old benchy things that are sort of prints at the front right a little bit, and yeah, we'll create the G code and take that over to Pronterface.
Right, well that really should be everything. Without further ado, get Pronterface fired up, load the G code in, send it to the printer. I'll just sort of, you know, leave it going just in case it just doesn't work at all. There's no point in me stopping the video if like 30 seconds later the hot end is crashed into the bed, blue tape's everywhere, and yeah, that's that. If it does seem to be going alright, I'll just, yeah, once I've seen that it's going alright, I'll stop the video and start a time lapse, and I'll probably get going on this. Right, so here we are back in Pronterface. Seem to have seen a lot of this recently as well. Right, the printer is fired up and connected. I have preheated the bed. It's actually running at about nearly 15 volts. And it took about 5 minutes that time to get to 55 degrees, so not too bad. It does pull quite a bit of current, but only for the first 10 seconds or so, and then it sort of drops down to, I don't know, sort of less than 8 amps anyway. So let's connect to the printer. All good. So let's load a file, and let's go to my desktop, is where I chucked it, I think. There it is. Yep, it's in the right place. Yep, fits on the bed. It's going to take 1 hour and 40 apparently. Not too sure about that. As you can see, the bed is getting up to temperature there. I think we're ready to go, to be honest. Do we just hit the print button now? I don't even know. I don't know. I don't really look this far ahead. Well, let's hit print. So all being well, it's now going to wait a while for the temperatures to come up. Extruder target is only at 20. That doesn't make much sense. Something is wrong there. Let me check that out and I'll get back to you. Right, well, I'm not entirely sure what happened there. I think it's a clash between the G code coming over from Slicer, Pronterface, and the printer itself. It was refusing to take a temperature to set the bed to, to set the extruder to. So to get around that problem, I've removed the settings of temperature from the G code, and I've set them manually in Pronterface. Reset everything, and it now is taking commands from Pronterface to set the extruder. I can see that the PIDs are definitely need looking at. Especially on the bed. The extruder isn't too bad, but the bed, yeah, needs looking at. So yeah, I've got an updated version of the G code without any instructions to set temperatures. The temperatures are exactly bang on, so let's print. So we should see it doing a homing first and then bed leveling. As you can see, the increased speeds that I've put in configuration H have sped things up a bit. They might actually be a tad too fast now. I'm not sure how quickly it should be doing it, but yeah, I may have gone a little bit over the top there. and it's going to finish that and hopefully start the print. Well, as AVE would say, today is tomorrow. Yeah, so it's now the next day. Turns out that with the benefit of hindsight, finishing off this bottle of rum didn't really lead to a great state of mind to analyse what went wrong. So yeah, there were a number of issues, some of them minor, some of them kind of a bit less minor. Nothing massive. In fact, I was overall quite surprised with how the print came out, at least up until it went horribly wrong. So yeah, we got it here. It printed the bottom just fine. I mean, I had to stick a little bit of a brim on there, and to be honest with you, it's a lot better. Let's get rid of this bit of blue tack. It was a lot better than I was expecting for a first print. I mean, there were some issues with getting the bed heated and all that kind of stuff, but I'm pretty sure that's just down to PIDs. So yeah, what actually went wrong? It seemed to be going so well. Well, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you. It seems to me that it just it might have just missed a layer or missed part of a layer and then started printing into thin air, and then of course it went rapidly downhill from there. So that being the case, I think it's probably, you know, an extrusion type thing, which yeah, I'm not entirely sure what would have caused that. It could have been that because I had a fairly makeshift holder for the filament, so it could have slightly jammed up. I haven't really tuned the stepper motor driver that drives the extruder. Done the axis ones but not the stepper. It could have been slipping in the roller because I haven't really done anything about adjusting the tensioner much. So yeah, I do think it's those things, but I'm going to investigate fully. It could have been, well, I don't know what else it could be, to be honest. I don't think it's bad adhesion, but I'll look at it more closely and we'll see. The other things were, well, my G-code, I got a bit of an issue getting the custom G-code at the beginning. It basically just didn't do anything, but I think that's because it was setting the bed temperature and then telling it to wait until it reached it before doing anything else, and it never really did reach that temperature stably, so it never really did anything else. Bed adhesion wasn't amazing. I don't know whether I've got the wrong blue tape here or what, but yeah, it wasn't great. Have to use a little bit of extra sticky stuff on there. But other than that, well, I think I'll do a little bit of analysis, see if I can fix these issues, and try it again.